It's 7 o'clock.
Good evening, everybody. Tyler, I can see we have a quorum. We have Jeff, Brian, Craig, and myself. And I know John just had a work interruption that's going to keep him away tonight, probably. And has anyone heard from Dean? No, okay. All right, well, I'm going to call us to order. We have a lot of business tonight. So I'd like to call to order the November 4th, 2020 City Council meeting for the City of Wabasha, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thanks everybody for being here and so on time. As I said, we have a lot to discuss. I'll keep my comments short. We do not have any guest speakers that I'm aware of, correct? All right. Do you have any public comment? If you'd care to make public comment, please unmute yourself and state your name and your place of residence for the record, and we would be pleased to hear from you.
There. Sorry.
Hello, Mayor Durand and Council. This is KK. I'm at 224 East 3rd Street in Wabasha. And my public comment is I realize that the council members want to keep it closer to a 0% levy tax increase, of course, which I appreciate. But I also realize that to create a thriving community, you really do need to invest in it. So what I'd like you to do is not completely stop or eliminate programs, but consider shearing them or shaving some of the budget. Specifically, I know that you want to do a $50,000 elimination to CIP, and that is to improve roads, big machines, etc. I would like you not to completely eliminate it. I'd like you to shave it. Secondly, I understand that you would like to stop a contribution to Main Street, which is $6,000. What that would do is 2021 Main Street is going to focus on a program with the University of Minnesota to do a market analysis of the type of businesses that we want to attract to Wabasha, and then in some implementation programs. I do believe that businesses are one of the ways that make our community thrive, and I know you have some business owners on there. The third thing is, and the Eagle Center is one of our huge businesses, but they need other businesses to augment it to help them. A wonderful story was told tonight that a family came to the Eagle Center and they took a private showing. We're so proud of the town that then they rented a house for 3 weeks and again contributed revenue to our restaurants in town and did private showings. We need more of that. We don't need to eliminate that. Third is, I know that you want to eliminate the summer revenue programs, which is about $8,000. And that means those are all the cool things that in our community that we're looking forward to. COVID, of course, impacts things, but we need to look for ways to get around them, not completely eliminate them. You know I'm really proud of Wabasha. We've been here about 1.5 years. I know I'm passionate. I really care about it. But what I would like to know is if you're going to completely eliminate these programs, what are 1 or 2 initiatives that you're going to do to make this community continue to thrive? So executive summary, shave, don't eliminate. 2, realize that there's long-term implications. It's not just for a year. And third is, I'd really love to know 1 or 2 actions that you'll do to keep the city vibrant. I love our city and I care.
Thank you, Kay. I won't comment. We'll address what your public comment speaks to, certainly in that agenda item. But thank you very much for your thoughts and your explicit suggestion. We appreciate that. Any other public comment? All right, hearing none. As I said, I'll try to keep my mayor's presentation short. I just want to thank everybody who ran for office very, very much for your commitment to service and congratulate those that appear to be those elected to service in the future. I think I don't know if we're decisive or not. We certainly have to canvass the elections next week, for which we have a special meeting. So that's just a reminder that on the why can't I keep track of the days? On Thursday of next week, we will have that meeting to canvass the election results and look forward to that. But really appreciate everybody willing to put themselves out there to serve our community. It's a very big commitment, and we know that those who ran take it very seriously. Thank you to our election judges and everybody who made the polls work very smoothly as far as I could tell myself as a voter in person. I appreciate all that was done to eliminate any confusion related to the polling place change. I voted early in the morning and saw that the transportation was in place, ready to go. So I know that was extra work for staff, and that, those demands are, you don't have a magic wand to wave to make sure that those demands are met, and that work is very important and appreciated. So thank you to everybody who made yesterday smooth, including our police, who were very attuned to the potential for any disruptions, and take that very seriously, and patrolled our canvas, our election polling places. And thank you to everyone who didn't create problems, frankly. Thanks for being peaceful, everybody. With regards to our community, I think it would be remiss if I did not comment on what has been a significant uptick in COVID-19. I will not bore you with the details. They're not boring, they're terrible. But with regards to the actual numbers, as I have in the past, I try to keep connected with public health very closely. And I asked for the actual statistics that are shared with our schools, who of course are having to make very difficult decisions related to the learning model. And they're being advised by public health, and it doesn't make that decision easier. But just for anyone who has not been as close to the data, I haven't been particularly close to the data either, at least at this level, and so I appreciate receiving that from public health. Wabasha County had 478 positive cases as of 9 a.m. this morning. Again, at 2 p.m., the data was pulled, and that went from 478 to 497 positive cases. We are seeing daily increases at that level. For another frame of reference, on September 9th, the period of September 19th through the 2nd of October, the estimated 14-day case rate, which is within 10,000, population 10,000, was 25.89, and that is the rate. A month later, the period of October 17th through the 30th, that rate jumped to 58.72. And I am not close to the Department of Education's guidance, but my understanding is they're working with an understanding of, that we're exceeding the threshold at which it's clear whether we should be having in-person instruction, and the schools are having to deal with that. And as you've seen in the region, schools are making decisions pretty rapidly, shifting their learning models. So I just wanted to speak to that in terms of the actual number of positive cases. That data is also available from the Department of Public Health. I'm sure they'd be happy to share it with anybody who wants it. It's a little overwhelming, but at the same time, it gives you a complete sense of day to day where we're at. So we do have community spread in our community. At this point, I would guess that most of you know an individual who's impacted. And thanks again for everybody who's made efforts, including the request from our ambulance service to the county for CARES Act funds, which was successfully agreed to, was accepted to be funded. That kind of forward thinking, positioning us well to be able to respond to the needs of our citizens and our healthcare settings is really, really appreciated. Thank you, Ed and Tyler. I know you guys worked very hard on that, and thank you to the county for hearing that application. I think I'm going to keep it there. I would like to get back to the agenda. Call on anybody else, reports from any good news, and then I'll go around to the committees. So I'll start with, I like to kind of mix it up, but then I end up sort of going down the road. Tony, can you talk to us about streets and parks? Anything we should know?
Yes, we did have a street commission today. I was not there, however. Dylan ran that meeting because Wendy and I had a different one to attend. But we have an alley behind 318 8th Street East that needs some rework. It's at a very steep grade, and there's a retaining wall that has basically over probably the last 50 years worked its way out into the alley a little bit. And so we're going to look at possibly redoing a retaining wall there. So I got approval to do a survey and get that done so we can start planning that for next spring. We had snow hauling bids. We have one bid that came in, so that was approved. And then moving on to the park board, we have some cottonwood trees down in the campground that are wreaking havoc on some campers. And so we've trimmed them over the years. I've hired somebody to trim them. And they're huge trees behind the mill. And there's 5 or 6 campers directly underneath there, and we've had some damage to their roofs in the past. And so the decision was made at the park board and with staff to remove these trees. It's going to remove a lot of problems, and we'll replant some new trees in that area. And then we had the request came from the city council, and I did not attend that budget meeting, but somebody had made the recommendation to possibly look at getting new boat slips for Ike's Park. And since we have our waiting list has been full for a couple of years. And so we did talk through that with the one bid that I got. And then since then I've received a couple more bids, so we can go over that later on the city council agenda. That's all I have.
Thanks, Tony. Just so I don't surprise Craig in John's absence, I'll call on you, Craig, if you can do a Port Authority report, but I'll next go to Tim for planning.
Yeah, so we met on the 13th. We welcomed the new planner, Harry Davis from Bolton Mink. We updated the solar garden ordinance, kind of help with the screening of these gardens, the use of better technology, and then address some abandonment stuff that would normally go into a CUP, but we're going to make it into the ordinance since we've added it to everyone anyways. We're also talked about changing it to an IUP instead of a CUP, and then we'll have a public hearing on the 10th for that ordinance change, and then it'll come to the council in December.
Great, thank you. Brian, anything from utilities?
Yeah, we met Monday. One thing you'll see on your agenda, consent agenda, number 8, number 5, property tax assessments. Couple landowners not paying water and sewer bills. We're just voting to assess the invoices onto their taxes, their property taxes. And then there was one additional one. We've been doing some mowing that we also charge for when we have to. And so when they're not paid, we put them on the taxes. And so that's what item 8.5 is for when you get to consent agenda. Other than that, business as usual.
Okay, thank you. Craig, can you appraise us of Port Authority's last meeting?
Yeah, we met on the 20th of October. It was a Zoom meeting. So we went over things. Most of them are typical payment of bills for the city staff. Our lawyers had a small bill that we paid. It wasn't that much. Talked a little bit about the emergency loan program. We got an update from Tyler on that. And then we talked about needs and direction. How do we want to proceed with finding a new direction and new needs for the Port Authority? And so we're working on that. That's an ongoing piece of business. That's about it.
Thank you. Ed, anything from Ambulance Commission?
Nothing from Ambulance Commission. We haven't met recently. I give them monthly reports and basically stating about our new ambulance coming up and when that's going to be. Well, this next week on the 9th, it should come into Rochester. DKL should be put on probably the 10th, the 11th. Everything should be getting installed, and by the end of the week, we're hoping to have it in our hands. So that's kind of our big thing right now, and trying to keep everyone safe with the uptick in COVID, and that should be everything that's new. Any questions?
Thank you, Ed. Darren, anything from the fire department?
No, not really. Nothing's really changed. We haven't had no meetings or no drills for last 6 weeks due to the COVID outbreak there, even within the department. So our run volume continues to be busy, and that's about it. So I don't have nothing else.
Unfortunately, no rest for actual runs in COVID. Anybody else? Any additional good news or comments anybody wants to make at the top of the meeting? In absence of an administrator report, as we await the hire of our new administrator, Wendy, Jess, Tyler, do you have any staff reports you'd like to make at this time that would give context for the meeting or keep us appraised of anything you're dealing with?
I just wanted to bring up that we had a really great day yesterday for elections.
Good, glad to hear it.
We're trying to figure out feedback here at City Hall.
That's a perennial problem.
Otherwise, it went really fantastic. We really appreciated all the help between the departments, the fire department, public works, police, city staff, and everyone in the community that came out. The turnout for the actual election was phenomenal. It was a really great day for all of us involved here.
Good. I know it's an exhausting day, but if it's a functional day, that's a different story. So thank you for everybody.
I just wanted to,
Yeah, please, Jess.
feedback for the new polling place was also very good. It was, people loved it. It was open. It worked out very well for this election.
Okay, good. We'll keep that in mind. That's a December decision we have to make. So good to have this. It's a year of experimentation. Sometimes that's okay. All right, so we do have a consent agenda in front of us. Jess, I didn't see an attachment for that item that Brian referenced, number 8, consent agenda item 5. Were we missing something?
I emailed that just shortly. Yes, there is an
Okay.
attachment with the 3 assessments for utilities, and then there's 1 assessment for lawnmower.
Okay, great. And so we have also provided to us these updated warrants with bills related to the election. I'll start from the top here. We have our minutes from our October 6th regular meeting. We have our November warrants, and you probably saw a late update from Jess today because those warrants just keep coming in. And the October 19th special council meeting, which was our meeting to discuss whether we wanted to go forward with the resolution on the CARES request for the ambulance. We have the West Side Tavern pull tabs, which is a motion to approve as a location for Fire Department Relief Association pull tabs and E-tabs on the West Side Tavern. And then we have the property tax assessments, which Brian described. And if you want to take a look quick at those specifics, they have been emailed to you. With that, do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll move.
To approve.
I think that was Walrick first, Woodley second. Great. Any further discussion? And we'll take a roll vote.
Woodley,
Yes.
Walrick,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Pelican,
Yes.
Sella,
Yes.
Duran.
Yes, sorry about that. I noticed Dean is here, so to clarify attendance, all commissioners except Friedmeier are in attendance, and it's possible John could still join us. All right, thank you. We do not have a public hearing tonight. On our general business, our first item is the Wabasha Riverfront Revitalization Project Bonding Bill update. We have at least 2 guests who want to get us up to speed, and it is, to me, it is an item long awaited and filled with good news. So I don't know, Randy or Meg, if you'd like to take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Durand. I'm Randy Eggenberger. I'm board chair at the National Legal Center, for those who may not know. I'm also joined tonight by Meg Gamage-Tucker, who is our CEO, and she may be chiming in from time to time. I'll be talking about the purpose of the meeting tonight, or me being here, us being here, is to bring you up to date on where we are on the funding and the economics in general of the project. We prefaced this meeting by sending you a sheet, a 1-page summary, and I will be referencing that. I know that is available on the website if some in attendance don't have it in front of them. And I also have a few notes that I've written for myself So when you see the top of my head, it doesn't mean I've fallen asleep on the job. I'm referencing my own notes. In the interest of time, I'm not going to rehash the full past, but I will make you aware of any changes that have transpired recently. So to that end, let's just jump in. The report that we provided you with has basically two sections. The upper part is the bond request and award. Think of that as the revenue side, because that's what it is. The lower part are current estimated costs associated with the project. So we're going to talk about the inflows and the outflows of cash and where the project stands today. The original bond request, I'm reading from the first line of the report, was $10,190,000. As you know, the state graciously gave us $8 million, which we considered a victory. That represented, well, the crux of it is we went in with a $17 million project, and the state awarded us with 8, so that left $9 million at that time for private fundraising. And that's a pretty good relationship to start with, not quite, a little bit more than a dollar for dollar match on our part. The state doesn't have, contrary to many people's perception, the state doesn't really have a firm match requirement. It varies from project to project, and it's really a matter of a meeting of the minds and then gaining approval as you proceed through the process to make sure you're adhering to the spirit and intent of what the legislature approved. So we started with the $8 million gift, which was terrific, but it did require us to raise $9 million before proceeding. We have made some forward progress against that goal in the range of $3 million. However, the big but there is that much of that money is testamentary, which is a word I have trouble saying, but it basically means somebody has to die before we get it. And that presents a challenge. When you're dealing with the state, we have to literally have cash in hand. There's 2 ways to do that. The first way is to get the money from donors on private fundraising. The second way is to get someone to underwrite a pledge. And we do have both avenues available to us, but the pledges have not been underwritten at this point in time, meaning borrowing money against a pledge, essentially. So we're sitting there with some good progress towards our goal, but still a very large gap in order to commence on the project. And you can't move from square one until you have the money in the bank or the pledges collateralized. Given all of that, and that, by the way, brings us up to where we were this past spring or February type time frame. Then COVID hit. And there were a number of things that we got together to discuss and sort of looked into our crystal ball, as everyone else was at the time, and asking ourselves what impact the COVID experience would have on this project. And a couple of the things that were pretty obvious to us were it would probably slow down our fundraising, which it has indeed done that. We knew we had the risk of having to close the facility. We did close for some time, as everyone knows. We were able to reopen on a partial basis. And you're well versed on how we accomplished that. I think we have done a good job of maintaining safety in the community and for our employees and visitors. However, you're never out of the woods, as the mayor attested to at the beginning. We're really just beginning to peak in this area. So every day is a new challenge for us. But we expected we may have to close or significantly reduce our operations, and all that means less money in the door. So that was a concern. It occurred to us that perhaps the advent of COVID which we would describe as lemons, could be potentially turned into lemonade in the form of approaching the state and asking them to consider going outside of what I would call the traditional governance of bond awards and considering a phased approach to the project. And they were open to that. And so we presented a scenario to them, which the crux of which was to get half of the bond award sooner rather than later, and to reduce the fundraising, the private fundraising bar, as significantly as we could in order to accelerate our ability to move forward on actual construction. The state was very agreeable to it conceptually. They liked the idea of us being able to make forward progress. The project is well supported at the state level by both sides of the aisle. But we still had that matter of fundraising and how that would balance out. In the end, we were able to get approval, and it's now been approved. By the way, it stretched out most of the summer, not because of our particular request, but just because it was hard for the state to agree on a bonding bill in general. Once they approved the bonding bill, we were in there in both the Senate and the House versions with the request to get $4 million advanced to us as soon as we're able to raise $1,790,000. And I might refer to that as roughly 1.8 million as we talk, just for ease of conversation. But that is a big difference, needless to say. That gives us a $4 million carrot of immediate funding if we can raise, just a hair under $1.8 million. So now the proportion has really shifted in our favor. Now, I think it's important in the spirit of full disclosure to remind everyone, including ourselves, that, that's the first chapter or inning in the game. We haven't avoided future cost, and as a practical matter, we have kicked the can down the road to some extent, but it's an opportunity for the city of Wabasha and for the National Eagle Center to move forward on significant construction during a time when we all could use some good news, and clearly our economy could use a shot in the arm. And so we think it's a great victory and a great opportunity, but there's still work to be done on the matter of the $1,790,000. So that kind of brings you up to date. That legislation is approved and done, and that carrot of $4 million, if you will, is out there available to us. So I'm now on the second or third line. The actual bond award was $8 million. Available fund draw for phase one is $4 million. You can see on the chart that's broken out, $2.5 million for the National Eagle Center and $1.5 million for the city of Wabasha. Currently, well, I'm going to just finish off that thought. And you see also on the chart the second draw, which is a future draw, no time date associated with it at this point, other than to say there is a limit on how far we can stretch that legislation before actually drawing the money. It's several years, and we've been assured there is even the capacity to extend that. So we're going to put phase two aside for a while, but bear in mind that when phase two comes along, at the original project request to the state, that $17 million number, we will have something in the neighborhood of $7 million of private fundraising at that point in time. But as we stand here today, and the purpose of this discussion is to talk about the $4 million carrot and how we might raise the $1.79 million that is needed. And that would give the city of Wabasha and the National Eagle Center combined $5,796,000, with which we want to make as much forward progress as we can possibly make on this project. Okay? So before I move to the footnotes, which are important, and I want to be sure everybody has a chance to read and understand them, and then on to the cost estimates, I'll just let you ask a question if you have any relating to the revenue side of the picture. And I should have started by saying, and feel free to interrupt me on any line item, because if there is any confusion or uncertainty on your parts about how this economic package is shaping up, this is a perfect time to clarify that and have those discussions. So feel free to interrupt.
Randy, I would just say from a process standpoint, it might be helpful for everybody to understand how these refined cost estimates were arrived at, because I know a great deal of effort went into that, and I think everybody would benefit from understanding that.
I will indeed do that, Mayor. Thank you. I'm going to save that for just a minute. So as we get into the costs, I'll preface it with that. But let's just hit these three first footnotes quickly. The city's pro rata bond award is $1,099,000. That number is based on the city's proportion of the original proposal. So because the city went in, it doesn't matter exactly, but the net result is that the 86.26% portion of the total request that was attributed to the city, when we apply that to the 8 million we actually received, that a 1 million, let's call it $1.1 million award to the city of Warren. The city, this proposal or this summary assumes that the city will actually be able to draw 1.5 million from this first tranche of funding from the state, which is a $400,000 plus for the city. And that additional money is the compensation for the development rights on the open space as a practical matter. So the city ends up with $1.5 million, the Eagle Center ends up with $2.5 million on this first tranche. The second footnote just reinforces the point that we do need to raise the $1.8 million. It also sets forth that pledges do qualify to the extent they're underwritten, presumably by a bank, most typically by a bank, although it probably could be other facilities. And then all draws, and this is really important as well, have to be approved by the Minnesota Office of Management and Budget. We had to make our case to the MMB in order to get this phased approach to the award. And we will have to continue to make our case to them as we refine costs and wish to get disbursements from the project. It isn't an open checkbook. There's a check and balance process there that we should all be happy exists to make sure that recipients of bond awards are spending the money appropriately and in the manner in which, in the spirit and intent of the original proposal.
Randy?
Oh, yes.
Can I add to that? As we're having conversations with the MMB and members of the legislature, we were focusing on what we could do in the community to have impact quickly. And that's why the focus was on the open space, on the dockage, being able to exhibit part of Preston Cook's collection, which was one of the reasons that we got this bonding, as well as enhancing access to our eagles, which is a huge tourism draw. So when we looked at this and phased it out, our focus was on what we could do to have immediate community impact. We've been very careful as we've been open to do the best we can for the community to create draws, but we also want to make sure that as we're using the money, this first 4 million, that we have the most response back to the community to build the resources. And then going forward, as we build the center, that then we build on that. So I want to reiterate multiple times that the focus is on open space, exhibits, education, draws to the community, but in a very careful, thoughtful way.
That's great. Thank you, Meg, for reinforcing that. Meg is exactly right. We were conscious of getting, for lack of better phrases, the best bang for the buck that we could possibly achieve, and the most visible progress for multiple reasons. One, to keep the community engaged in this process, to show the world that this is actually going to happen, and quite honestly, to show prospective benefactors that we've made forward progress, and we're going to continue to need their help and support to, finish this thing off. We did assure the MMB, because this is quite unusual for them to support this sort of an approach. We did assure them that we wouldn't leave anything looking unfinished at the end of phase 1, because there will be an indefinite lag until phase 2 is able to be constructed, and we don't want a project looking, semi-completed. And they took our word on that, and with the city's help, I'm sure we'll be able to manage that well. So the city's dock is in there, the amphitheater is in there, the open space in general, and then we'll talk about these line items. Now, I'm not going to go, so now we are turning to the cost section, which is the lower part of this handout. And as the mayor pointed out, this is the most complicated part of what I've put in front of you. The cost section adds up to $23 million. The proposal to the state was $17 million. What happened in between time? If you haven't asked that question, I know you will have. So a couple of things happened. One was that we began to focus our energies more on Main Street, because we want to keep as much open space on the river as possible, and we want to activate the downtown businesses. And the consensus was clear on the part of the board that that should translate to getting as much done of the whole project on Main Street as possible. That adds cost, and the reason it does is because it's more expensive to renovate old buildings than it is to build new construction. And so we sort of evolved away from a major footprint on the riverfront in favor of doing a better job on Main Street. That added expense. The second thing that added expense is the passage of time. It's been 3 years plus since we first ran those numbers out, and expenses have gone up. There are other factors. The third, I guess, would be that the truth of the matter is the proposal to the state was not fine-tuned. It was a broad sweep. It was our best effort at the time based on, various sources for construction costs, but it wasn't enough based on the pre-design formal process that we went through. With the city's help, the city council advanced the $150,000 to polish off pre-design, and the big deliverable of pre-design is to take your concepts and turn them into dollars and cents in a much more precise way. And so the model that you have in front of you, the costs that are on the line items, total $23 million. But that doesn't mean we have to spend $23 million. The state approved a project of just a bit over 17 million, and their funding is in that spirit. So our challenge is to deliver the spirit and intent and a very workable expansion for a price we can all afford. That applies to the city's portion, and that applies to the Eagle Center's portion equally. So I didn't want to just take a guess at how we would knock those numbers back down. So I left them in here at the escalated cost, if you will. But bear in mind that we are not suggesting all of that has to be spent. There may be other ways to accomplish our goals in a more cost-effective way. And we're on that in a big way. And I think the city will want to join us in that process. And we'll talk about that towards the end. So this chart, I'm not going to go through every expense item, but I am going to open it up for any questions as you looked at it and reviewed it, if there are specific things you see. But you will see that the general strategy was to make sure we get the city's portion done right up front, as far as we can go at least. Big Joe Alley probably can't be finished off until the very end, but some of that work can be done. We wanted to get the open space, the dockage, and the exterior stuff on the riverfront as far along as we could. And in part because of COVID, it really got us focused on what can we do in the existing riverfront building without expanding it physically. What can we do to make it more functional? And the upshot of that was to try to get an expanded Eagle Care and Eagle exhibit on the first floor, and to try to get expanded exhibit space in general on the second floor. And the strategy we came up with is to expand the Muse and the Eagle stuff on the first floor into what is currently the classroom, and try to pick up that classroom need, that function over on Main Street, likely in building 3, but yet to be determined. Buildings, we call them 1, 2, counting right to left, opposite way you'd think, but starting at the corner, we refer to them as buildings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we think we can make building 3 work for a temporary auditorium, if you will. And then the other important piece is to move administration from the second floor also to Main Street, and that will free up the space for increased exhibits for both the Eagle theme and the Native American theme, which we would like to expand pretty significantly. I failed to give accolades where I should have. Senator Goggin and particularly Representative Haley were instrumental in us getting approval from the state. And I also want to recognize the Prairie Island Indian community, because they went to bat for us. They're influential at the state level, and we feel we just have a really strong working relationship with the tribe, and that's very exciting. So we want to make a big statement on the second floor of the history and the sense of place, because the Mdewakanton tribe literally existed in the space in which the Eagle Center now occupies. Those initiatives would roughly double our Eagle Care / Eagle exhibit space, and roughly double our general exhibit space upstairs, just moving admin out and moving the classroom function to Main Street. So that's the crux of it. Yes, go ahead, Meg.
I'm going to add something else. On the other thing that we're going to do in the #1 building, 100 Main, is we're going to bring some of the Cook collection into that first floor gallery. So we can have, in the #3 building, we can have engagement, community, public space, classroom kind of space that we're renovating. But also in the corner building, we are planning on doing a gallery that has some of Preston's collection, so that we already start to push out into Main Street in a simple way, pieces of his collection to get people engaged in the fact that that's kind of helping us renovate Main Street and engaging more people in that space.
Yeah, that's a great point. we aren't looking at this as a, only do certain things in phase one and save other things to phase two. We're trying to accomplish some piece of all of our objectives in phase one, and that includes the Preston Cook collection, as Meg stated. So if you take a look at the expense lines, it starts with recognizing that the city advanced the $150,000. So there's a credit there for the city. Technically, that 150 should probably be shared, but I didn't want to get into allocating expenses. So for now, we just put it all in the Eagle Center column. And then you'll see costs associated with each of the components, the total cost, and then how much we anticipate in phase one and how much in phase two. And so the items, the components, are listed more or less in order of activation, but not, don't take it as cast in concrete, because it absolutely is not. It's still a work in progress, but there are certain dependencies that, of course, we know have to be done before the next thing occurs. So we've tried to recognize that as best we can in those component costs. And effectively what we've done here is ran as much through this, utilize the 4 million plus the $1,790,000, the total of 5.8 million. We've utilized that as thoroughly as we can in this chart, and essentially we run out of money when we turn to Main Street, but we have a good $1 million with which to invest in Main Street. And so we think we can do a pretty good job in phase one of securing the buildings, making sure that the facades are solid and the roofs are holding and so forth, and utilizing those buildings in the manner in which we just discussed, classroom and Preston Cook Collection exhibit. And we may even move some retail across. We haven't really made that determination yet, but the idea would be that we do sort of a light renovation of Main Street in phase one to get it presentable, but we would come back then in phase two at a future date and polish it off with the more elaborate entrance and the permanent auditorium. So those are like the two big pieces that are missing from phase one. Other than that, we think we can present some functionality in every goal that we have. And then we address phase two when the time is appropriate to do so. We've got a lot of work to do between now and then. All right, so at that point, I'm going to pause and ask, do you have any questions on the chart and read it, any of the numbers that are on it, how they're apportioned, and so on and so forth.
Hey, Randy, this is Tim. So under the costs component, the fourth line down, detailed design for open space, site, and dock. Can you just speak a little bit more about that line item?
Yeah, I'll tell you as much as I know about that. First of all, these costs were determined by Milestone Real Estate Consulting, and they are project managers with some experience in major projects. And so we've trusted their numbers to some extent. Right. That design work, Tim, would be specifically to go from pre-design, which is still a fairly broad stroke, to detailed design that a contractor can actually work from. Whether it's exterior work or interior work, these are the actual blueprints, if you will, that you would engage a contractor to work from. So there's going to be that expense. We're going to have that as well for the riverfront building. The Eagle Center will have some of that as well, because we have to bridge from this, high level pre-design notion to what the actual nuts and bolts are of the construction project. That is, I've broken that out between the two partners based on the relative cost of each of those components. So the apportioning of that expense we're open for discussions on, but we know that we have to allow for some expense for this detailed work.
And we actually have reached out to a couple of our partners, our architect and J.E. Dunn, to give us some estimates on the schematics that we could get by the end of the year. And we'll be working with the city on how that, the impacts and the implications for the open space and the dockage. We know what the costs are to figure out the schematics for the riverfront and the Main Street buildings, but we need to work with the city, Tim, on what that looks like for open space and dockage, and what the ultimate dock expectation is, how big that is, what it looks like, and how we're going to build that so it's the best fit for the community.
That's right. And I'm getting ahead of myself. So after this, we're going to talk about what we do next. And one of the things we'd like to do next is propose some sort of steering committee or task force, WRR group, which has been very, very good. But now we need to really dig in at both on the city's part and the Eagle Center's part into each of these line items and determine what we can do for the money we've apportioned. Are there other ways to accomplish these goals in a more cost-effective way? The city, let's just talk about the dock as an example. You know, basically our requirement there was for a large vessel dock. I don't know anything about building docks, so we have to trust our engineers and architects on that, but I have to believe there are different, you know, strategies for arriving at a usable dock. And those conversations are all fair game at this point. We now have some clarity on the funding process, and if we're able to raise the matching private funds, we're going to be ready to move forward. So these things are really, the rubber's going to meet the road now in a way that we just haven't been forced to before. So take every line item on there with a good dose of we're gonna flesh it out and make sure we're doing the right thing in the right order to the right level of elegance, if you will, to accomplish the goals.
So if I can ask a question?
Yes.
So what the city's share is a total of 1.554 million, and that'd be 1.331 million in the first phase. So we're going to have to find a way to come up with 1.33 million for phase one. When do you expect that we would need to have that money?
Well, Craig, that money will be part of the draw from the state. So the linchpin there is that we raise the 1.8 million of private funding. And once we can demonstrate to the state that we have those pledges collateralized or the cash in hand, we will be able to draw on the $4 million. So the city really won't need cash. Now, you can deduce that right now the total expense for the city is estimated at $1,554,000. The city's portion of the bond draw is $1,005,000. So there is a shortfall there, but it's a relatively small one. And with some aggressive thinking on the design elements and so forth, you know, I'd like to think we can work that down. So the city really, we're not asking the city to come up with cash, but we are going to ask the city to help us raise the private funding that we need. And what I mean by that really is to beat the drum in favor of this project. Where do you get $1.8 million of private funding for a project of this nature? You get it from people who have roots in the community, whose heart is in the community. There are capable benefactors out there who, if we can make a strong enough case to them and demonstrate to them what we have available to us. And this is the first time we've been in a position to do this now because we have this certainty on this first $4 million. If we can raise $1.8 million of private funding, the state's going to send us the money. And that's going to get this project kicked off and literally underway.
Yep.
So you said you had something like 3 million raised, but it was dependent on some people dying first.
So,
Unfortunately.
so let me explain that to you, Craig.
Okay.
What we can do to formally book as a commitment to the project are things that are irrevocable gifts. So if somebody has a testamentary gift, which I know Randy doesn't like the term, but it's an estate gift or life insurance that can be changed during a person's lifetime, we can't book that. And a bank or a loan institution will not allow us to use that as collateral. We have had over $2 million of commitments. Some of that has been used to support the management of the buildings to date, to buy one of the buildings, that kind of thing. So we've raised over $2 million that are bookable pledges. There's about $1.1 million that are in estates as well as life insurance. So I mean, that's the difference. I mean, we can book certain things, but there are certain things that an institution like a bank will say it's flexible and the person can change their mind. So we cannot book that and we cannot depend on that as collateral. But totally, we've raised well over $3.1 million. $2 million of that is pledged or is coming in.
So what's your estimated breaking ground date?
Well, Craig, that's going to depend on coming up with the 1.8 million. We cannot break any ground until we have either the cash in hand or pledges that a bank will loan us the money against. And that's not an unusual process to borrow against pledges, well-qualified pledges. Banks will do that. But we haven't had that conversation with the bank yet because we don't have the $1.8 million to offer them. So that's the next step, really, is to supercharge the fundraising process, to get the word out to the community, to tell the story to potential benefactors that we've got a $4 million carrot hanging in front of us, just waiting for us to match with $1.8 million of private funding. If we can do that, we have a total of $5.8 million with which to proceed on phase one. And the second we have the money, we are able to move forward.
We are expecting, Craig, to have schematics by the mid to late December. So we're already moving forward, going from pre-design to schematics, so we get some of the engineering issues dealt with, which you will be helpful with if you can look at some of that as it's designed. But our architects and construction firm that we are just getting some estimates from, they have given us a projected date of December 21st to get schematics that we can share with the community and get some investment from those potential benefactors so that they see the reality. Pre-design is beautiful and it looks really great, but as you well know, you have to have that detail and design so that people know how it's going to really flesh out. And so by the end of December, at the latest, we should have things that we can really share and get some more detailed and more impactful investment.
But meanwhile, we can focus. Go ahead, Craig.
I was just going to say that Yeah, I would suggest you get some kind of a timeline, no matter how temporary it is. Because investors and the public, the citizens, want to have some idea. Is it going to be, are you going to start in 2021? Are you going to start in 2022, 2023? Some kind of timeline.
Well, the intention is that we break ground in early 2021.
Right.
January, February, as soon as we can break ground, we go for it.
That's exactly right. We were frankly hopeful we could do it during the winter lull, but it took a long time for the state to finally reach agreement on the bonding. We were, hopeful that would happen back in April or so. It ended up being more like September. So we did lose some ground there, but we aren't talking about, some date way off in the future. We're talking about as early as we can get moving this spring as possible. A good way to think about this, the economics of this, is that for every dollar we have to raise in private funding, that will turn into $3.22. There aren't very many communities that have that kind of setup, especially at this moment in time. In fact, I doubt there's another one in the state of Minnesota, and there may not be one nationally, that has this funding already approved and in place. All we have to do is come up with the private funding portion, and we're good to go.
Yep.
This is Dean talking, Dean Ware. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, a few questions. I see the cost estimate here was provided in May 1st of 2020. Obviously prices have gone up since then. Is there any concern there with these current numbers? Second, I'll ask the questions first and then you can answer. The second question I have is Big Joe Alley. I see you have phase 1 for the city of Wabasha 169 and phase 2 223. What's involved in phase 1 and phase 2 for that? And then once again, I believe you said building 1 starts with the old extra law office. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So okay, and that's all the questions I have. So
okay, good. Thank you. Good question. So to your first one, yes, we are concerned. Time has passed since these costs were run out. To be very candid with you, we've been really careful about spending with consultants. And so we elected not to go back and redraft these numbers because it would have cost us several $1,000s to do that. We know we've got to consider the passage of time. We know construction costs are high right now. Anybody who's doing anything with a private home knows that. So those are concerns. But again, remember that these aren't commitments to spend this amount of money. This is what we have in there now. And as we scrub out these individual line items, I just have to be confident that there's opportunities to gain some ground. We intentionally didn't scrub out individual line items at the beginning because we didn't want to trick ourselves or you into thinking that we can get, something at an unreasonably low price. These numbers are exactly as they were cast by the architects and engineers. But anybody who's ever built anything knows at some point in the project, you go back to everybody and you really start to sharpen the pencil. So I think there's going to be some wiggle room in there, but it's absolutely a good question and one that we have to be mindful of. To your second point, the Big Joe phases are a bit of a guesstimate. The work to be done in Big Joe Alley, the total amount of dollars to be spent, I think is fairly accurate. But how that is staged between phases is kind of my guess. And the idea is that you're going to have to go into Big Joe Alley and do some infrastructure and the things that have to happen in advance of construction. on the amphitheater and so forth, I assume. But I also assume you can't finish off Big Joe Alley until a future date because there's going to be lots of work happening on the Main Street buildings, including the backs of those buildings in phase 2. So I just took a guess at that Big Joe is going to be spread between the 2 phases in some proportion. The reason the second, it was actually split 50-50 by the management group. And I think they escalated the second phase to add for the passage of time between now and then.
Randy?
Yes.
I would also add that our architect would like to do some elements, whether it's murals or some nice addition to the alley, even if major infrastructure things don't change, to make it a more engaging, attractive place. So that's already in their mindset that they're going to add that to that space.
That's a really good point. Big Joe Alley is a challenge because there's a lot of private property ownership there that we don't necessarily have control over. We don't have control over, to put it bluntly. And it's not all particularly, no disrespect intended, it's the backs of the buildings, and it's not all that presentable at this time. We certainly hope we can do some cosmetic work there of some kind. And as Meg said, one of the suggestions was maybe a mural of some sort to go across the back of those buildings, which would be pretty cool because is tell the Native American story. Empathy is going to be much more than just a performance, but it will well and outside. Because that's where the Native Americans have been for centuries, maybe even thousands of years, presumably thousands of years, we would love to have an opportunity to tell that story in that space visually and intermingle sculpture and so forth. So a mural could definitely be added to that mix as another element of a way to tell the Native American story and what the eagle meant and continues to mean to Native tribes in terms of spirituality and religious beliefs and so forth. We've got a great working relationship with the tribe. We're also working with them on plans for an aviary, offsite aviary up on tribal lands that we would jointly operate. The tribe, for their spiritual purposes, would have birds that are designated as religious birds, and the Eagle Center could potentially use the same facility. We can't intermingle the birds in terms of usage, but we can intermingle them in terms of physical space. And we would use that potentially for elder eagle care, for respite care for eagles that need a break, and also potentially as our home base, if you will, for outreach programs because of its proximity to the Twin Cities. The long-term vision is that we would love to get the Native peoples comfortable with the handling requirements and so forth so that they are able to care for their birds within all of the confines that are set up by the Fish and Wildlife Service and others, and to be part of the outreach program, because it would be terrific to have outreach being done, at least in part, by Native Americans who have this strong cultural connection to the bald eagle. So that's sort of the long game plan. We got a lot of work to do, but that's what we're hoping for.
The other thing I would add to that is in this public space, in addition to the Native American story, we are working with a couple of potential funders on public art and how that connects with usable space as discussions about monuments and support for changing monuments and local stories and that kind of thing. So we have some funders that are very interested in how we can potentially use that public space to tell stories and to support building the public space so that it's useful for the community, but also provide support, financial investment back into Wabasha to build some of those areas. So we're really excited about doing that. There are a couple of major foundations that are really interested in working with us on building out both the cultural connection, but also this public space and how we share those messages about the eagle. So we're really excited about the public space going forward.
Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions at this point on the expense? Our presentation is coming to an end here, but I do want to summarize with what we see as the next steps. But before we do that, any further questions of any kind on the handout or the project in general? Okay, if not, what are the next steps? Well, raising the money. If I sound like a broken record, I am to some extent, because that's the key goal for us. But also on the spending the money side, we want to be sure we've got those expenses fleshed out properly. And to do that, we're going to propose that we put together some sort of steering committee that includes Eagle Center representatives, of course, but also representatives from the city and potentially community members or even potential benefactors. We think the more engaged we can all be in this process, the more ownership we'll all take of the outcome. And we just think good things will come from that participation. So I want you to think about that. We don't have to make any decisions right here today, but do know that we aren't here to just present a project to the city of Wabasha and the citizens of Wabasha. We want to create a project with the city of Wabasha and the citizens of Wabasha, one that we can all be proud of and that really puts the community on the map. This is, I can't overemphasize, it is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is something that's unique in the world, and we have a huge opportunity here to make it even bigger and better than the Eagle Center as we know it today. So we want your help on that. We need your help on that. We need the community's support. We have to really beat the drum for this project to make sure we get it underway. The window of opportunity is upon us.
This is Dean again, Dean Ware. As we know, small donations go a long ways. If there's individuals out there that want to give 20, 30, 40 bucks, whatever it may be, 200 bucks, 1,000. How do they go about doing that? Website? How do they go about doing that?
So Dean, I'm going to address that. Historically, we've had stuff on the website. We're trying to reorganize our website. If people are interested in investing, all they have to do is give us a call and we can figure out what's the best opportunity for them to allow them to be a partner in all of it. So just have them call the center and we will figure out the thing that works best for them. That's a priority for us. When it comes to fundraising, what you want to do is you want to figure out what the individual wants to support and how we can also make it a win-win for them. So just have them give us a buzz. And we're building new statements, we're building new materials so that people can see this comprehensive look, and we're happy to share that. But if anybody's interested in the short term, just have them give me a call and we'll figure out how to make it work for them.
Can we throw a phone number out there?
Sorry, Dean.
Oh, I was just going to say, can we throw a phone number out there for anybody watching this or reading the newspaper in the
Yeah,
next couple
sure. It's 565-4989. Just call the center and just ask for me. That's fine.
And I'm
Meg?
going to add a couple of other names. I should point out that Meg is a highly experienced fundraiser. In fact, she taught fundraising. So we feel we're in good hands on this process. And helping Meg are a couple of names that you'll all recognize. John Woodley is the Capital Campaign Chairman.
Yep.
So, engage with John any opportunity you get, and he'll be happy to work with you and explain more about the project. And then the other one that just should be mentioned is Don Jacoby, who is critical in getting us to where we are today on the riverfront, and is still helping with the fundraising as well. So John Woodley is Capital Campaign Chair, and Don Jacoby is very, very involved in the process as well. So we've got a good team, heading out to get this work done, and they'll be happy to have your input and support.
Absolutely.
Randy, would you like us to, how would you like us to follow up with regards to this, your request for steering committee participation or whatever that group ends up being named? Will you invite that with a more formal outline of what those, how you see that shaping up?
Yes, Emily. Assuming you guys are up for that, and it sounds like there's some interest in that, we will absolutely reach out to you and get some concepts going about how, we want it to be a big enough group that we have any expertise that is directly applicable will be very, very valuable to the process. But we also want to keep it small enough it's manageable. So we'll find a happy medium in there somewhere. And we're absolutely interested in the meantime in nominating yourself. If there are people who are just excited about the opportunity, please speak up, because we are going to welcome your assistance.
Yep.
Everyone on council and city staff, for that matter, know I have no direct authority over anyone, but I will, in sort of a mom moment, say, I expect this of us. I expect staff and council participation. This is our responsibility to steward this resource. It isn't the city's, whether the city will support this or not. We are a committed partner. We will behave as a committed partner. I expect us to do that. I expect that of our next administrator, and I know that we'll get good input from everybody who does participate. So how exactly that looks, because of people's various expertise and ability with regards to capacity of time. I'm not suggesting everybody has to put their fair share of time in. I just expect us to function as a functional partner, an enthusiastic one, and to help resolve all of the additional need for detail that Randy has made clear is necessary.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for
Thank you, everybody, for the time. We appreciate your attentiveness, and we look forward to working together as a team moving forward.
Thanks. I know this is a lot of information for folks, but I also can tell you that COVID has not slowed this process down with new leadership. Despite significant operational upheaval and all kinds of innovation to address that issue, this process has really solidified under Meg's and Randy's leadership, as well as the commitment of the board. I can attest to a lot of investment of time from our working board, lots of good committee work happening to see to it that all of the aspects of this project are not disrupted or not forgotten. I can say that having been co-chair on the early open space community engaged committee, which involved, I want to say there were about 14 of us. This conceptual work that is now going to lead to actual schematic design it exceeds the expectation of that original group. I don't even want to refer to it as the open space anymore, because that just simply doesn't justify what we're really going to accomplish. I want to call it something like an interpreted landscape. It's really, it's gone so beyond what we originally thought, which is like, how big of a stage could we fit there? And then how would we book acts? It's just so beyond that. I mean, it's a far more in depth and appreciate, you know, I think from an economic development standpoint as well as a public benefit standpoint, it is a far richer resource than I think we originally realized. And so that part of it excites me very much, as does the doc. And we've certainly as city, you know, city staff and elected officials, that is a space within which we can try to influence some smart decision making. And I think there'll be lots of good input on that. So I'll end it at that. I just really appreciate the time that's gone into this, which has been every single day since the last time we heard from Randy and Meg. Every single day and night. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
And I neglected, I'm very sorry. I was a little rattled by that COVID data, to be honest. I talked to public health a little earlier in the day and I didn't look at the data until just before we sat down, but I did not invite changes or additions to the agenda tonight. And I would like to add an agenda item to general business item, would it be 10.8, and that is an in-depth update related to the administrator hiring process, which I'm sure everybody's eager to hear about. Any further additions to the agenda that I missed? All right. Meg and Randy, we will understand if you do not want to stick around for the rest of our very exciting agenda. We thank you for your time. You can read the minutes if you need to do other things. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you
so much, everybody.
very,
Take care.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So our next item of general business is the 2021 police contract. And as you probably recall from our last regular meeting, council requested that we have legal opinion on a segment of the redlined contract. And so you can, I'm sure you've already reviewed the attorney's response. And I'm trying to pull it up here. Essentially, the attorney's recommendation was that we reject that for a number of reasons. And my attachment isn't working. Is anybody else having issues seeing that, or did anyone have question about that? It's a numbered reasons. Darn it. See if I can completely reload the agenda, including that it's not typical, but also that it's covered in statute. Some of it's essentially a legal issue, not a contract issue. So let me see if I can pull up the.
Yeah, I believe there are 6 reasons to it.
Thank you. Any comment on those reasons or need for clarification?
I don't think so on my part. I think it's pretty clear. I'm glad we got attorney's feedback on it.
Agree. Sorry for my technical issue here. There we go. Okay, I just want to be thorough here. The primary reason the city should reject the proposals are as follows. This is our memo from Flaherty and Hood. The issue of such insurance and legal defense are arguably non-negotiable items. Even if such items are negotiable, regardless of any labor contract provisions currently addressing similar items, the city rejects them. The subject matter of such are addressed in law, such as Minnesota Statute 466.07 and 471.44. Accordingly, they are issues of law, not contract. These provisions are not prevalent in Minnesota public sector labor contracts, though they do appear in some. The city is required to and does comply with the law and has the required insurance for such through its insurance carrier. The city is not required to, nor will it address these items in the labor contract. That's the recommendation from our attorney. I think it's pretty thorough. Do we have a motion related to this item, given review of the attorney's response?
I'll make a motion to follow the attorney's recommendation and reject the proposal.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Moyer. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Falcom, second from Moyer. Discussion, I guess, procedurally, Wendy, do you have additional, did they provide any additional sort of pragmatic discussion of how to now facilitate a revised contract?
So just to be clear, you're rejecting the entire contract or just the portion that we wanted the feedback on?
The attorney in the email says reject in its entirety. Yes. So I had asked earlier if we could approve the contract, just removing those 2 items. I didn't get a response in time, didn't ask in time too. So From what the email sounds like, we got to reject it in its entirety, and I guess maybe they come back with what they think.
Well, that's part of the
At this point,
negotiations,
what we would
isn't it?
do is I would let them know that the council made a motion to reject it in its entirety, and they need to bring back a new contract or proposal to go in front of you, hopefully by December.
And I would also, it clearly specifies 26.1 and 26.2. So, you know, I would throw that in there too.
If it's okay with you, I would just send the attorney's notes and say that you made the motion based on that information.
Yeah,
I
that
think
sounds
that's
good.
fair.
It appears we have consensus on this. Any further comment or discussion? Otherwise, we can take a vote by roll. So the motion is to reject the contract in full, facilitate that communication, and anticipate a contract being brought to our attention in our December meeting. All right, we have a motion.
Are we going to make it clear that we just want the sections 26 and whatever they were, those changed when we move? Because I think that'd be the goal.
Yeah, I would think they'd interpret this pretty clearly, but yes, I think that is what would be wise to state that in the communication. All right, anything further? Otherwise, we'll have a roll vote.
I have one question.
Sure.
This morning. So the deadline on this needs to be done when? December what, Wendy?
I believe it's for year 21. Year 21. I don't know that if you don't have a contract, you're just building towards one. I'm assuming you could go without one in the meantime.
All right. I was just curious. Thanks.
Okay, if nothing further, we can take a roll vote.
Woodley,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Telecom,
Yes.
Fellow,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Durand.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, our next item is a budget update from our finance director, Tyler Grabout, and I will characterize my my personal take on some of the public comment that came in at the top of the meeting. There has been a commitment since we set the levy at, I forget, 8 something, that we would move down from there. We can only move down from there at that point, but that we would make efforts, significant efforts to move down from there. I think even prior to Chad's departure, he just wanted it to be clear that there isn't any way to suddenly make any of these numbers sort of diminished without an impact on services. And so no council member, to my knowledge, has said, I want these things gone, but we do need to have some level of detail presented to us so that we know what options are if we are going to further negotiate this this percentage. So Tyler prepared that for us to give us, I guess, aspects to the budget where they're to demonstrate where aspects of the budget would have influence on that overall levy. And I'll just leave it there. I just want to be clear that, you know, there wasn't a call from council in prior meetings to say we want to slash these elements of our budget. There just was a commitment to really take a very serious look at every item and understand if there's any way we can get you know, to 3%, et cetera. So with that, I'll let Tyler tee it up for us. And I know council's given consideration to this, and since our very first, since our setting of the levy and before, really. So go ahead, Tyler.
Thank you. So just to update where we're at, preliminary levy was set at 8% at the September council meeting. At the October meeting, we came with a version that had a 6.9% increase. Due to the TIF 3 decertification, the effective increase was actually about 3.9%. So during the month of October, department heads and myself have looked through the budget to try to find ways to reduce that levy, which we know council is looking to do. So I know there was some emails sent with some options of ways that could possibly be done, which the mayor and the public comment referenced. So we just need to balance those items with the quality and options of service we want to provide residents. So in order to get the effective levy increase to 0%, it would take about $72,000 in cuts from our current budget, just to put that in perspective. So I don't know if there's any discussion or comments, questions.
Yeah, I'll have some comments, and that's, I don't know that we need to get down to 0%. 0% would be nice, but I'm thinking that the cost of living is somewhere around 2%, that I think we should try and get down to that point. And I think one of the things we need to do is have the department heads contribute on this. And Tyler, you gave us 5 options here, but to be frank, I didn't like any of them because we were completely eliminating all of those things where it was a complete elimination of the option.
Yeah,
so I'm just thinking that go back to the department heads, say we need to get down to 2%. Can you cut something in your budget? And when I'm looking at cutting things, in order to have the least impact, I generally look at the largest expenditures. So the budget that are largest are police and public works. Tony's not going to like this, but they're the largest. They can make cuts that are not, they're going to be dollar-wise, they're going to be more significant than the ones that are outlined in this thing that you sent around, Tyler. And those costs can be absorbed a lot easier by a larger budget. Even though it's going to be some pain involved, I understand that, but I'm just saying, I think the department heads should get together and decide where can we cut. We need to get it down to the 2%. I'm going to throw that out as a goal that I'd like to see.
I'd just like to say too, also mimicking what Craig's saying, I can see they could cut, I don't see why you couldn't cut the forestry budget from 25K to 15K, cut the, let's see, the park maintenance from 40,000 to 30,000. No one will like this, but cut the Chamber of Commerce from 15 to 5,000, and Main Street cut it from 6 to 3,000. That's 33 grand right there that you can cut off the budget. It would still leave the program still there, but a little bit reduced, but that's 33,000 right there.
Yeah, I never meant to cut any of these completely. It was just to give a reference on some options. So yeah, definitely not that any of these need to be cut completely or that we want to cut them completely.
Tyler, this is Dean. I had sent you an email and I don't know what happened to it, but I had spoken in that email about the reduction of the CIP by 40,000, I believe it was. And then if we sell the ambulance for 38 to 40,000, putting that money back in, would that bring our tax levy down by doing that?
Yeah, I did respond to your email. That wouldn't affect the levy directly. Any money that we get from the ambulance sale will go directly to the CIP. So that could offset if we decided not to do a CIP contribution for 2021. The sale of the ambulance would effectively help to offset that.
So that would bring us down to about 4.2%. Is that correct?
If we got rid of the CIP contribution, yep, that would bring us down to 4.2%.
And then whatever we sell the ambulance for, plug it back in. That would not. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. That's
Tyler,
what I would.
Oh, sorry, Dean. Go ahead.
That's what I would look at doing. That way we're not really cutting anything. We're essentially cutting the CIP, which we can put back right in right once we sell the whole ambulance. That way we're not cutting Ashbore and we're not cutting Main Street and we're not cutting the Chamber. CIP is for future use. So if we take 50,000 out of that and throw 40,000 back into it later in a month or two, I think I don't know. I don't know if that would work or not.
Tyler, you've done a nice job outlining this for us in a format that gives both the levy increase and the relative increase to taxpayers based on the TIF implications. So I would ask people to revisit that because, you know, if we're trying to get down to an actual 2% levy increase, I just want to remind everybody that we've also asked our employees to take no cost of living increase. So if we're referencing that as some kind of a standard because we feel the impact on citizenry is, you know, that's where we kind of get that intuition that that's where we want to be, but we aren't contributing a cost of living increase. That doesn't sit well with me. Number two, with regards to the SIP contribution, we had a very significant, I want to say it's a win. I mean, it's an application and the funds are there for relief, but to have that ambulance in hand and not have that expected cost coming out of the CIP is a very big deal. We owe that to the leadership of our staff. None of us can take responsibility for that. And so again, I just want to underscore that, you know, our government is our staff. I would also say that our government is our staff who cannot do everything. And so a lot is projected at the city, and to undermine relationships with an entity like Main Street that has really, you know, synergized a lot of volunteer effort to receive funds back into our community, I think that's a penny wise, pound foolish for sure. I know that it seems like a nice little line item that's sort of like, is that essential? You know, when you've had when people are experiencing difficulty, I would suggest that it's one of those tools that makes sure we really have equitable resources out there for economic development at many different levels. I mean, we cannot wait as a city for large development to come in and solve all of our problems. People need assistance at a lot of different levels, and Main Street provides that. So I wouldn't want to see a hit there. And I hear what Jeff is saying. It's 3,000 instead of 6. It's such a significant cut to that investment. It's a 50% cut to that particular initiative, which again is aligning a lot of citizen interest and initiative to accomplish things that we need in our community. So that would be my take. You know, the chamber contribution, I certainly would like for them to make a case for the amount that they receive. I don't believe we've had an explicit case made for us. And you know, in the moment that we're in COVID, I would appreciate hearing from them so that we can understand what that $15,000 contribution is effectively doing. I'm not questioning whether it's not effective, but I think an update in this budget year would be helpful. I don't want to live in a city that doesn't fund summer rec. It saddens me that we don't have a summer rec program of our own, that we don't have a parks and rec program. So that to me is, I think Tyler and I laughed about it. Some of that stuff is just, I think it's a bad look. It's like, you know, that I don't want to be on a council that says we don't provide any participation in summer rec. So back to the point Craig made about the larger budgets, I understand kind of the thinking there. I would also say that those larger budgets are larger because that's where our services are. So as we all can reference, you know, through the difficulty Tony's had managing the brush pile, because what we thought was a $1,000 budget item was potentially going to become much bigger than that. You know, there's variability in those big budgets as well. And so I don't want to pressure and have a sort of a vote of, I mean, I want to be clear. I have confidence that our departments heads have scrutinized these budgets in collaboration with Tyler and of course prior with Chad. If something dawns on you, or if you feel as though there maybe is a little bit more conservative, you know, number in one of your budget areas, and you think, you know, we probably, if I really think about prior budgets, you know, because again, the budget is not a checkbook. It's not like we're giving Tony the check for this money. It's a planning tool. So I would I guess that's how I would characterize it. I think the CIP is a real moment of opportunity here based on what was achieved with the ambulance purchase. And I also want people to keep in mind this increase to taxpayers, even let's just say we made no SIP contribution, would be a 4.2 levy increase with an increase to taxpayers estimated at 1.2%. That I can get on board with. So that would be my that's the context within which I'm kind of thinking through this.
I got a question for Tyler. What is the percentage of a tax increase that does not increase the levy?
So right now, so to not increase the tax, for the taxpayers to see no increase would be 72,000. For the actual levy to increase,
Tyler, can you repeat that? You broke up on me.
Oh, sorry. So if we want the taxpayers to see a 0% increase, then we'd have to reduce 72,000. If you want to get the actual levy increase to 0, then I would need to. Let me see.
I'm just kind of looking for a percentage. I think it wasn't at like 2.8%. We could do a 2.8% increase in taxes would not go up in a period.
Yeah, now I understand. 3% is the difference.
So 3% increase in the city budget leaves taxpayers with a 0% increase in their taxes.
Correct.
So I have, going back to what Craig had mentioned earlier, cost of living is around 2%. I got guys, 2 guys that I hired this year, and they both took a pay cut to come to the city. And, you know, when we hired them, I had to say, hey, you know, this is the pay step. You know, you get your cost of living per year. If everything goes right, we're not in a huge recession. And I talked to Lake City, I talked to Plainview. They're both giving out raises. There was a question put out on listserv to all the cities in the state of Minnesota. Nobody came back and replied that they were not giving out raises this year. So that's one thing that we as employees kind of took in the shorts to help us move along. And I think when you guys ask us to cut the budget, you're asking us to cut services. We have to decide what services we're going to cut instead of the council that should make that decision. It kind of passes the buck on to us is kind of what I feel. I mean, can I take money out of the forestry? I can probably take 5,000 or 10,000 out of there. Obviously I won't be planting many trees next year. Everybody's been hounding me about trees, and I had an order for $4,600 that I was going to order this fall because I had money in there left over. And of course the weather hit and we started getting freezing temperatures, and with them taking 2 weeks to get the order ready, I wasn't feeling confident that I was going to make that order. Is there money in there that we can carry over for next year? I'd say, yeah, we could probably carry $5,000 or $8,000 over next year. And we've done this in the past. It's been probably 10 years ago or longer, where if there was money left over in your budget, you could say, hey, I'm not going to use this money for streets this year. I want to carry 10,000 over and do a bigger project next year. We have done that before. So that's always an option. I have, obviously I have money in a 527 in my park improvement. That's slated to go for handicap improvement. Issues that we have in just about every park that has bathrooms, restrooms. We apply for a grant and we got to have matching money for that. So if we don't have that, we might as well forget about the grant. And then we're out of state regulations for handicap accessibility right now. And if you don't, this is my opinion, if you don't look at doing some sort of a tax increase, we've had the problem the last few years, we're behind the ball. And this year, especially if you already have a 3% allowability of range in there that you're not going to affect taxpayers, and you do another 2 or 3% on top of that, it's going to cost people $20 a year, was it, or $24 a year, Tyler, increase in their taxes. I mean, to me, I'd pay that in a heartbeat. Versus a $100, $200 increase for some people in some cities, but that's just my opinion. You know, we could carry some money over from this year that's not used, but it keeps putting us behind, because next year when we get here, we're not going to have that 3% flexibility to make everything look wonderful. And I just feel it's going to be even tougher next year. But
I echo a lot of that, Tony. You know, I have heard from no one, and I'm not saying that the concern is there, but in terms of people's motivation to reach out to their elected officials, I have heard no one who is concerned about a tax increase. Meanwhile, I have heard all kinds of people who want some of the services that we're probably going to be putting on hold. And that is very concerning to me. You know, I think it sure has shone a light to me on the value of government and what public monies do. When you think about the assets of our parks this year, when you think about, you know, the fact that our streets are in good shape, I think we can move forward, for instance, on this, you know, the Eagle Center project, because we're not taking a break and waiting to see what COVID means. We're continuing to try to thrive and be resilient and function. And so I don't want to confuse ourselves. I don't want us to develop a sense of security that we're somehow being the good guys by limiting taxes, when in reality the unintended consequences of that are apparent. I mean, as Tony has pointed out. So it's not a diminished concern for me that this has an impact on people's lives, but I also have had lots of people, you know, sort of begrudgingly recognize that financially COVID has not affected them in positions of retirement. You know, it's not that it hasn't affected them in other ways, but we have businesses that are struggling to remain open, certainly, but I don't want us to see it as an opportunity for us to somehow stall on what the public sector is responsible for. You know, and I think a comment was made earlier that, you know, our county and school board aren't having an increase. I heard a piece, you know, analyzing that. That's true nationwide with regards to schools, and everyone is very concerned about it. Essentially, schools are so consumed by COVID, they're not making referendums that have funding associated with them. They're not able to. That is not good. I don't want to see, again, a pause in the investments in our public schools. So I'll get off my soapbox. I just think we have tools here. What Tyler has presented to us, or what Tony has discussed with regards to, you know, carrying forward funds, essentially, and certainly what was accomplished with the CARES funding on the ambulance and the TIF, of course, is an important tool in this year's budget as well. I just don't want us to create a narrative that has a sort of a false premise built into it.
Yeah, Emily, I guess my two concerns is I don't want to cut services, and I think looking at the CIP and even the future steps with the CIP. So if we cut the CIP by 20,000, so it leaves us at 30,000, sell the ambulance, put it back into the CIP, which is a gain of 30,000. And in 2022, we have power costs that was 25,000 that we will not use. And then obviously 4 years from now, when we talking about replacing ambulances, that we save 175,000. But just with the 2022 $25,000 save, and you know, the ambulance sale, put it all back in there, decrease the current CIP to 30,000. I mean, you get it down to about 3.5, which is a, you know, increase to the taxpayer of like 1.5. I think that's perfect. We don't lose services. We don't take anything out of the budgets of our departments, which have cut. And I've heard numerous employees kind of get concerned that they are getting raises as well. But, you know, that was decided, a long time ago that was going to be the case. But this doesn't affect anybody's budget then, so we just decrease that, and I think we're good. I don't want to see it get it all the way down to, you know, negative numbers. I mean, I think 2% is a really good increase, and I think that's worthwhile to look at.
I concur with Tim. This is Moyer.
Yeah, I think we're talking about, this is, we just got done talking to the Eagle Center, and they're saying, well, we've got some costs coming in. 1.5 million are covered, but there's still, the actual costs are going to be 1.552. So there's costs coming down the road. And if we can keep our costs down on the budget, that's going to be a benefit to us, because we don't know what's coming down the road with COVID and everything else. I think we need to be smart about this and keep the purse strings a little bit tight. And I think that the department heads, you guys are the ones that put these budgets together. You guys are the ones that know the best way to trim them up. We're not asking for anybody to take a definite painful cut. When you talk about employees' salaries and things, that's one of the most painful areas you can do. Maybe there's another area we can cut something. Can we make some of the equipment last a little bit longer? Do we need all that equipment? Later on, we're going to talk about a new squad car in the CIP. Hopefully it's in the CIP, and new equipment for the fire department. So we need to look at ways we can trim some of the costs, or at least hold them back till we find out where we're at with COVID. We're entering a season of unpredictability. We don't really know what's going to happen, and that's why I think it behooves us to try and hold the line on the taxes. So I agree with Tim and what Dean are saying. You know, if we can get that down to 2%, if you can use the sale of the ambulance and all of that, that works fine. I think we need to do something like that.
I urge everybody on council not to sit back and wait for a perfect solution to come from the departments. I think they've scratched their head about this a lot. I really want you to be specific about what you think, where you think there's room, either in the service provided or the, you know, the resources needed to get that service out to the public. I know our department heads will be responsive to you in explaining where those costs come from, but I don't want this to be an open question mark for them until we address it in December. I want you to reach out directly. Thank you.
Question.
Yeah, Tony, go ahead.
When you say 2%, are you talking 2% above the 3% no tax threshold, or are you talking about a 2% increase period?
Well, I was talking about a 2% levy increase.
So 2% levy increase, taxes in town would actually go down on people's taxes because we have growth coming in from Tyler. Maybe you want to go through that quick, or?
Yeah, so whatever the actual levy is set at, you can subtract 3% of that, and that's what the actual taxpayers are going to see. So if you're proposing 2%, that means our taxpayers are going to see their taxes actually reduced by 1% year to year.
You know, and I guess I was referring to the levy at, 3.8, which then would drop it, the increase to taxpayers to 1.4 or something like that. That's what I was talking about.
Okay, I can go with that. I guess I'm
That's in essence
misunderstanding.
what we're getting at. We're trying to get it down to, 3 or 4% levy, which then would drop to what, 1 point or 2.
Yeah, for some reason, those two aren't together, and I don't quite understand it. There's some extra money coming in somewhere, but
yep,
the increase to the taxpayers is the bottom line.
Yeah,
So
I think
that's
if we
what
can
I'm
keep
talking
that
about,
around
2%.
2, I think that's perfect. That's me.
Yeah,
So
that's me too.
So if I understand this correctly, we can have a 3% budget increase through the whole entire city, and it's not going to raise taxes at all because we have growth coming in and we have TIF district coming offline for the condos. So that money is getting pulled back in. So then anything above 3% is an increase. So then if you're saying a 2% increase, we're talking a 5 then? The 3 plus the 2. That kind of, so we're all on the same page?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony, for asking for that clarification. My dog wants to interject, but she's not going to be given the floor. Anything further? We can move to the next item. Okay. We have before us purchase of a squad car proposed. I'll let Joe, I assume Joe's in the background there. I'll let Joe lead us on this one. Thank you, Chief.
Oh, my timing couldn't be worse for this. Yeah, our squad car was on the CIP for this year. It's been backed up and getting close to the end of the year here, so I do want to get rolling on this. The squad car that we're replacing is a 2014. It's got 153,000 miles on it. And I think you guys probably have seen from the bills coming in when they get to this point, the maintenance is it's getting expensive. So I checked state bids. We usually go through Sugarloaf, Ford, and Winona. The last squad that we got was actually out of Roseville when we bought the truck. When we got our quote from Sugarloaf, it was $40,000, which seemed a little high to me. Looked through everything and said state bid. So we checked around and we ended up back in this Roseville and same exact vehicle, and we were at the 35. So we had gotten the quote from them, and that's the one I'm sharing with you. Sticking with the Explorer, just trying to keep in line with what we have, you know, so we can transfer equipment from the old to the new without having to change up and get a, you know, otherwise we're changing interior things and stuff to fit different vehicles. So we're trying to stick with the same vehicles, and we've had good luck with the Explorers. And the only issue is because we had waited towards the end of the year, the build date on this squad is not going to be until July. So we're going to have to make do with what we got for quite some time yet. Because even by the time we get it in, I mean, it's probably going to be next fall before this thing hits the road, because obviously once we get it in, we're going to have to get it in, transfer the lights and the equipment and things like that. So, but we're on a every 2-year cycle with this. And it's working well because we're getting a lot of years out of these squads, obviously, with this one being a 2014. I mean, that's unheard of to get that amount of time, but with the squad situation that we have set up, it gets spread out a little more with their use. We get more years out of them.
You're on mute.
Thank you. I appreciate that overview. It's clear, very clear. And so this is a planned CIP cost. Do we have a motion to approve this Explorer?
I'll move.
We have a first from Wallerick. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Woodley. Any further discussion or questions for Joe?
Yeah, I got a question for Joe. How basically do you decide to replace these? Is this just basically on a CIP plan and you just put it in there a couple years in advance? And also, do you guys keep separate maintenance and repair records for each vehicle? So you could kind of, you know, because maintenance costs are going to be pretty much level all the time. But when a normal person would be looking at the repair costs. If they start bombing up, that's when you replace a vehicle. So I'm just wondering how you really do your replacement planning.
Yeah, so the squad is basically, we set that up several years ago just to be on a 2-year rotation. Just by seeing how they last. The 2-year deal seemed to be a good rotation to lock into, and it seems like right around that 150,000 miles is where things really start to fall apart, because those are hard miles in the city on these things. So and the only issue with this year is that I'd been asked to kind of back this up. So usually if I order at the beginning of the year and there's a bit of a delay, I'd be having my new squad on the road by the end of summer, early fall. Since this is backed up here, we're just going to be a little delayed. So the squad right now is kind of at the point where we'd usually be sending it off. So we're a little behind, but yeah, it works out through the rotations that we're pretty much right at that point where they're at that 150,000 miles. It seems to work out pretty well like that.
Joe, this is Dean.
Yeah.
Joe, this is Dean talking. So I was going through this today, and I was wondering, when you guys go through this, like some of the packages and stuff, like the ultimate wiring package for 526, I don't know if you have that in front of you. Is that something that can be crossed over from our old vehicle to our new vehicle? And things like dark car feature, which is the $24 expense. I don't know what that is, but
Basically, we're getting the base model order for the police package. We're not adding anything. That's just what comes with the base model at the state bid. So there's no additions on our end to what that base model is.
all right, so like a hidden door lock plunger for $150. I have no idea what that is. That's needed, right? Or is that a add-on?
Hidden door lock? Oh, that's, yeah, so that's just part of the police package. So the door lock wouldn't be like available to somebody in the back of the squad.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was just looking at all the numbers and half that stuff I have no idea what it is. Thank you.
Yep.
Dean, it's good to, it seems as though you haven't spent much time in a squad car, which is probably a good thing. Me neither.
Only one of my dad was sheriff.
All right. Anything further for the chief? Otherwise, we have a motion and a second. Hearing nothing further, we'll take a roll vote.
Sula,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Walrick,
Yes.
Falcon,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
and Durant.
Yes. I don't know why I keep doing that, sorry. Next item is our Ikes Park additional boat slip discussion, which Tony alluded to. As you probably read, this is a purchase over $50,000. The park board strongly supports it, but wasn't able to formally make recommendation to council, but would like council to take a look at this. And then hold the prices, which it's not very competitive until this meeting. So we have a staff recommendation that while we're working with a short timeline to secure the price, it seems feasible in terms of installation, and we would regroup completely if we pass on this opportunity, which is obviously an option. Anything, Tony, that further that you'd like us to know?
Not really. I don't want to seem like I'm trying to ram this through. It just came up this way. They're looking for winter work, and the quote number 3, the large one, the first 2 quotes are both galvanized frame. The third one is an aluminum frame one. That's why it was so expensive, $212,000 some odd dollars. But that guy contacted me yesterday, and he sent me a revised quote. He found a clerical error, so it's now $126,433, which is way too expensive. So I basically using the quote 1 and the 2, and I'm not sure who brought it up, if it was the whole group or one council person, or but we got the information. I did get approval from the DNR. I do not need a permit. We are not providing sewer, water, electrical services. We are not expanding longer than our current dock that's down there, slips. That's about it. And this is going to have to be, it's not in the capital improvement plan, it's not in my budget. So I would guesstimate that it would come out of the general fund, like a couple things in the past, but I'm not quite sure.
If I recall, this came up because the docks are one of the areas where we have a revenue stream. Is that correct?
Yes, they've been full for 3-4 years. Maybe Jessica knows a little bit more on the history of it, but she's been here, about a year. But I'm just going off memory. There's been people asking us every year, and I know, Jessica, do you know if you got a count of how many people you said was on a waiting list?
Not offhand, but I would bet that there's at least 15 currently.
Okay.
How many boat slips will this accommodate?
22.
And where's it gonna go exactly?
So if you go into Ikes Park, the entrance off of Grant, we have the current set that's there now, which holds
Yeah.
22. This would go just to the right of that. Enough room so obviously both sides can get out, but there's room there. So.
Hey, Tony, I got a question for you. This is Dean.
Yes, sir.
In our franchise agreement with the marina, do we have a clause in there where we can put in our own docks? I don't remember what that was.
That contract is above and beyond me. I don't have any clue to that answer, Dean. I'm sorry. We've never had before. I'm not saying that there's not, but
I would think we're out of the franchise area, so I wouldn't think we would.
I'm pretty sure we don't have it in.
The property for the franchise area is from the bridge outward to the river, if I'm correct. I just want to double check that if we could.
Jeff was in on that. I don't know if you remember, Jeff, if there's any extra stipulation on that or not, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Well, I would recommend that. Go ahead, Tony.
If you did move along with that, we could write it in there that if there's something that prohibits us from doing it from the marina contract, we scratch it.
And that's what I was just going to say. I'll make a motion to approve this, as long as we look into that franchise agreement and make sure that we're legally in the clear. Thank you.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Meyer. We have a second from Walrick. Any further discussion?
So you said the money's going to be coming from the general fund. Is that what you said?
And unless anybody has any other ideas, I mean, it kind of came to us over last budget meeting, so there hasn't been any planning involved where it's been stuck anywhere else. It's not going to help the capital improvement plan if we take more out of there and put less in. There's not room in my budget, for that this year. So that's the only other scenario that I can think of.
Yeah, it might be better to take it out of the CIP just so it doesn't affect the levy for next year for the 2020 budget, or 2021 budget would be the only thing that I would consider. So CIP might be more appropriate here.
Yeah, Tyler, I was going to mention, we established a certain percentage money that we were going to keep in the general fund. So we have excess money in the general fund over that percentage we agreed on. Is that where we would kick that to the CIP? Is that correct? I think that's what we did. And so I would want to know how far or how much money over that percentage do we have left in the general fund this year or below it, before we spend this money on the dock. Do we have it, or do we have access that we're going to kick over to CIP? Maybe just a little more information on where we're at with that.
Yeah, I know through October.
My thought.
Nancy's we're pretty much on track with the budget. We should be close at the end of the year, but we can see where we are. Any questions?
Yeah, because we're battling time here, but if there's anything we can kick the can down the road on when we're so worried about our budget, I mean, this is a perfect example of. But on the other hand, it's a great revenue stream, and it will pay for itself in a matter of time. It's just is the timing right to invest that kind of money into it.
And I was going to follow up on my comment. I would a 3-year payback. I would prefer that money go back into the CIP, the revenue we get from this, rather than back into the general fund, if we're taking it out of the CIP.
I don't know if does our policy address that? I don't recall any detail about that, about a revenue stream, about an expense from the CIP that has revenue implications.
I'm not sure offhand. I could look into it and send an email.
Tony, do you sense that if we do our due diligence here, these folks might still be on the line due to their eagerness to?
The cheaper quote that I got, the cheaper quote that I have, he wasn't even willing to go past tonight. So I told him tomorrow that I'd let him know. So I mean, it's not the end of the world. I just revisit it and redo it. And did you see there was a savings on the bottom of that first sheet? And that was our savings of doing it right away was about 16 grand. That was the deduction for him having to do it right away this winter and having work. So I'm not saying it's going to go up that much, but it's probably going to be a considerable increase. But it is what it is. I mean, if we got questions, we got to answer.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm comfortable enough if there's enough support for this to go ahead, being that the payback is going to be so fast, and we'll start making money after 3 years. My concern, I'm not that concerned where I would vote no if this is something everyone wants to do. It's almost a guaranteed payback. Votes aren't going to go away unless something catastrophic happens. So I'm okay with it.
We have a motion and a second. Unless we have further discussion, we can take a roll vote.
Hello?
No.
Welcome.
Was that me? That's yes.
Okay. Yep. Welcome.
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Durand.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. I know these kind of conversations are a little counterintuitive, but it's appreciated. Thanks for all the background, Tony. All right. And I think we're getting close here, guys, but my agenda keeps stalling out on me. All right, and we have next fire department. Darren will bring us up to speed on this item.
Which item is it there?
It's the gas monitor with pumps.
Okay, what I'm looking at here is just replacing, we currently have 4 gas monitors at the station, which are used for, of course, going in and doing overhaul, confined spaces. City department uses these monitors frequently too when they go down to the manholes, etc. The ones we have are pretty old and they're outdated, and the last time we had issues with it, we took it in, they had to replace one of the sensors in there. There's 4 sensors in each monitor, and the sensor itself was $120. We just had another one go out, another monitor go out. We have 2 sensors that are out in this one, which it comes out to be $240. They're to the point to where it's not cost efficient for us to keep replacing the sensors in here because they're not available to put in after a certain point. So what I'm looking at doing is upgrading the monitors that we have now to more current monitors, which a monitor itself is $847, and they come with a little bit of a warranty, 2-year warranty on the gas sensors themselves. So what I would do is I'm looking to spend $3,389, which I have in my budget, just to replace the 4 monitors that we have. I think we can, with some adapters, use the charging station and the calibration system that we have to work with these new monitors. They're the same kind, just newer style. So that's what I'm looking at doing. I know it's a smaller amount, but I want to keep you guys informed of what's I'm looking at doing.
Yeah, this is Dean talking. I'll make motion to purchase 4, whatever you call them, monitors.
Gas monitors.
Curads, I don't know.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Moyer, a second from Sola. Do we have any further discussion? All right, can take a roll vote.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Falcon,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Philip,
Yes.
Duran.
Yes. And again, we'll have Darren discuss the Combi Tool Fire Department quote.
All right, last, what they've done is these hydraulic tools, which are considered like the jaws of life, et cetera. These tools, they came out with a battery operated model about 4 or 5 years ago. Well, we have hydraulic tools on our trucks, which is gives us continuously power for cutting cars apart or lifting up objects, et cetera. And the battery operated part of it has really kind of, I'm a hydraulic guy. I want the power when I have to do something, and the battery operated stuff has come around a long ways in the last 4 or 5 years. Well, the tools now that they've come out with give us a portability and a lightweight to take these with us into the woods, over the banks, use on grain bins, etc., with the same cutting force as the high tools. What I'm looking at is we tested one out last fall even as far, and the tools were compatible for strength and stuff as the hydraulic ones. And to make a long story short here, these kind of dropped in price a little bit so they could sell a bunch of them, I guess I should say. But this is the same type and brand that we use on our trucks now for the hydraulic side of it. And I was looking at purchase one last fall, kind of put it off to the side a little bit. And since then, we've had a couple calls where we could have really used this tool. We had to drag the pump, all the hoses, the adapters, all that stuff down over the bank a couple times for car accidents that were down by the railroad tracks, et cetera. And it took a lot of time. This tool will give us the availability just to climb over the fence or the guardrail, whatever, go down, do what we got to do. It's lightweight, a lot of power. And the same thing with the grain bin rescue. We were able to take this tool up on top, or where we got to go to cut the grain bin part open. It just gives us the availability. And this tool is $7,358. They gave us $1,500 off because we carry this line of tool on our truck now in hydraulic. And I just think it's time. We've had a couple calls where it's like, we got to start taking tools into the woods with us for UTV rollovers and et cetera. And I think we have to have the portability a little bit to keep up with what's happening. So that's kind of where I'm at today.
Yeah, Darren, this is Dean again. Is this a lithium battery that they use, or?
Yes, it's actually, it comes with 4 Milwaukee 18-volt batteries. And what it does is we just, of course, 2 chargers, and we have them chargers on our trucks, and we can actually interchange the batteries as quick. And then it only takes 1 battery to run that tool for about 8 minutes. So with 2 batteries on it, we can actually do an extrication cut for 15 minutes before we have to switch out the tool for the 2 other batteries that we have on the truck. So,
and then my next question, thank you. And my next question would be, would you be keeping the hydraulics in too?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Anything further for Darren, or do we have a motion to approve this purchase?
Is this in your budget? Yes.
I'll make a motion. I'll second it.
I didn't catch who was the first. Was that Craig? Oh wait, Falcom for first. We have Moyer for second. Any further discussion? Okay, we can take a roll vote.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Stella,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Falcon,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Durand.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. All right. The pleasure of this final agenda item never gets old. So we have before us the donations, and we would entertain a motion to accept them. I'm going to read them quick here, keep my agenda going.
You added an item, Mayor.
Thank you very much. This agenda is so distracting because I can't keep it loaded for more than a couple of minutes. I'm sorry. Oh, this is very important. Okay, I'm sure you've all been curious what personnel has been up to. You know, it's my practice and my commitment to not call you guys between our meetings. That's, the public deserves to hear this information and hear us discuss it. But personnel has been very busy, meeting weekly. Brian, John, Wendy, and I, as was approved by council. John is very reluctant, but feels it's necessary for him to step away. He's had lots of work demand that was unanticipated related to COVID and staffing shortages. So he really wants to make sure that there isn't a disruption related to our process related to his attendance. From another sort of high-level process piece of this, I was hoping for an in-person, you know, interview process. I think as we see this impacting the Midwest as it is, not all of our candidates from the Midwest, but most of them are regional and or in neighboring states. I think we're probably kidding ourselves if we think we can set up an in-person process and not have, again, further unanticipated disruption. If any one of us requires that we be quarantined, or a candidate requires that we be quarantined, you know, I just don't want to lose a candidate or have this process be flipped upside down. It's difficult, as Wendy will attest to. It's difficult already just to get an interview group together for a full solid day of interviews. I feel like we have 14 candidates. Tim spent a lot of time with me, probably 5 or 6 hours, screening candidates very preliminarily. We just wanted some context for their application because we have so many applications, and most of them, you know, qualifying in terms of the applications criteria. We have 7 that exceed the education and experience that we stated in the application. I'm very excited to hear from all of them. Those finalists will be interviewed by an interview panel. So if you would just keep this in mind as it relates to John's absence, we will need another member of council to participate in that interview panel. So the group currently agreed to serve on that as our existing personnel committee. In addition to that, Tony, we'd like on his role is so collaborative with the city administrator. There's just a tremendous amount of public works overlap. He will also represent several commissions. I've spoken with Darren and Ed and Joe about, you know, wanting to keep this interview group to a manageable number, and they agree that Tony's participation is critical. We also are going to have 2 members of other commissions that also have I think, a really important leadership role in our community broadly, and that is Jane Glander, who served for many years on the Police Commission, and Con Walters, who currently serves our Port Authority and, of course, has a role in our local bank, as well as is a leader in a lot of other community initiatives, and same goes for Jane. So we're looking at 2 dates, and I believe they're still both open. Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, the 12th and the 16th of November as all-day interview dates. And so we would be looking for a council member to volunteer to fulfill that additional spot that John held, and make a commitment to be on Zoom all day long, I'm sorry to say, with a bathroom break here and there. But it was advised by our attorneys that we really keep this to 1 day if possible. And frankly, letting it get out into 2 and 3 days doesn't really make the scheduling much easier. It seems like people were able to give that full day more readily than they could give a solid chunk of multiple days. So that is a lot of information. If you recall, originally personnel projected that we would maybe have 2 panels. And if I haven't clarified for council why that's not the avenue we're pursuing or recommending, it is because our legal counsel advised that it is very challenging to ensure that we would calibrate our 2 interview groups. While it would allow for more people participating in the process, she would, you know, caution that we can't really ensure equity for all the applicants because we can't really calibrate 2 separate groups. At this point, I also recognize it would be a tremendous scheduling challenge. So that's where that comes from. I'm trying to think what else the attorney clarified. She said, you know, from a process standpoint, typically when they're asked to get involved, it's at the point at which an actual offer is being made. So a finalist candidate has been identified, and that person, the offer for that person is being made for council to consider. Obviously, council, I'll just keep saying this over and over again, council has the authority on this hire. They may choose to reject that, that recommendation. There is also built into this the need to substantially check references on these individuals because they're very qualified, but we have to make sure that those qualifications are can be spoken to. And so that's the basic update. I'm sure people have some questions, or maybe Brian or Wendy, if I'm forgetting anything critical, if you would please chime in.
Mayor, this is Dean. Can you give me those dates again?
I just wanted to let you know that I didn't hear from Mr. Sula and Mr. Falcom both. So we would maybe need to figure out that situation as to who would want to sit on the panel with us.
Okay. So I joked with Jeff, we might have to draw straws or leg wrestle or something, but that's harder to do in a Zoom format. So what I'm hearing is you would both have interest, and would you both also have availability?
I can withdraw my offer, and if Jeff wants to do it.
I'll be available.
Okay. Dean, you had a question about those dates. Did that come through clear, the 12th and the 16th?
Yes, it did. And I may be available too, but I won't know for a couple of days. So I can contact with or get a hold of you guys. And if somebody else, if I can do it, somebody else doesn't have to do it, I'll be happy to step in.
Okay, thanks. I want to thank Tim. The screening was, takes a lot of time. He gave a lot of time and with very little notice, so I appreciate that. And I want to thank John for his contributions. They've been very meaningful, and I'm sorry he can't continue to participate, but his demands of being in a EMS environment are very challenging right now. So totally understand that. Any other questions related to the process? I think we're on track with our sort of the timing we'd hoped for. I actually feel really good about this. I think if we can get mid-November interviews, we're in a good place. If I recall, there was no one had an exceptionally long period with which they would have to give notice or anything like that. So we're still in line with a targeted, early 2021 hire, or I should say start date. Anything further? Please don't hesitate to reach out to Wendy if you do have questions. I mean, I think for us to discuss this as members of council is problematic, but Wendy's very up to date on how all of this is going. All right, and now I'm gonna try to get back to my agenda. We have our November donations, and I'll read those. I can't read those because they will not load. Is anybody able to read the donations for us?
I got it in front of me right now. Go ahead, Dean.
Go ahead, Dean.
All right, we got $500 from John and Sue Happy in memory of Peter Kloss. $40 from Jim and Claire Abbott in memory of Peter Kloss. $20 from Eleanor Groby in memory of Peter Kloss. $50 Amy and Michael Kolpax, I think it is, in memory of Julie McNallen. $60 Judy's bowling team in memory of Judy McNallen. $500 anonymous, and these are all for the library. And that is it.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to accept the donations?
I'll move.
Thank you, Tim. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Walrick and a second from Woodley, and we'll take a roll vote. I always want to combine this with our motion to adjourn, but that's not procedurally appropriate.
You're on mute, Tyler.
Thank you. Thank you. What's that?
Yep.
Just clarification, the first one was $50, not 500 as was stated.
Okay, acknowledged.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead with roll then. Falcom?
Yes.
Moyer?
Yes.
Woodley?
Yes.
Sella?
Yes.
Walrick?
Yes.
Durant?
Yes. And we can now entertain a motion to adjourn if we have no further announcements.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
First from Walrick, second from Woodley, and we can take a roll vote.
Moyer?
Yes.
Sella?
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Falcon,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Durant.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Oh, we made it just under 2.5 hours. That's a long meeting. I appreciate your time and attention. We've had a lot of time together, but it's been very good work because we approach the end of the year here. Thanks, everybody. And we'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.